Making space for your dream life. What if more isn't the answer to a better life? What if the answer is less? After raising 5 kids in an 800 square foot New York City apartment, we know a thing or two about making room for what matters most.
Welcome to the What Could Go Right podcast. We are your hosts, Erik, Orton.
And I'm Emily Orton.
And here we talk about personal growth and sailing. In 2014, we moved aboard a fixer-upper sailboat and bootstrapped a year sailing with our 5 kids, and it changed our lives forever.
We tell the whole story in our memoir, our book, 7 at Sea. On this podcast, we want to help you go from fear to freedom, one adventure at a time. Now, I haven't always been good at making space for what matters most. I thought what I needed was more space, and then that's how I would make room for what matters most. This principle became very clear to me when we were living in our New York City apartment. We had been there probably about a year, maybe a year and a half. And I was there with 2 toddlers every day, and they left little toys around everywhere. And sometimes I would stand on them. And I believed that the answer to all of my problems would, if we had a basement playroom.
Yeah.
If only we had a basement playroom.
Life-changing.
I could get things done. They could play, they could make a mess, and it wouldn't conflict with what I was trying to get done. We wouldn't be on this intersection of always, me and the kids being at odds with each other. And I definitely grew up in a home where my mom was a keeper. She had, I don't know if she purchased this, but she used to love this bumper sticker that said, "I break for yard sales." And she would find things that just needed a little fixing up, just needed a little love, a little help here and there. And she would collect them. And, you wanted to keep stuff that was mostly good. And so I knew it didn't come from me when I had this thought after stepping on a block for the 3rd time that morning that maybe you could make more space by getting rid of some stuff, right? My big problem was I need more space, but if we're going to have more space, then we're going to have to move farther outside of the city, which then means we're going to have to pay for a car and tolls, and we're not going to get to see, Dad very often, or we'll see you less because you had a much longer commute. And so it was just going around and around in my mind. And I was like, I don't know how we solve this problem. When that idea came in, what if you subtracted something to make your life better rather than adding something?
Can you remind me where I heard this from? Was it from one of our architect friends, or did we read this somewhere? But the architect was saying, like, basically, hey, if I'm really honest with if I were to be really honest with my clients, I would say you don't need an addition. You just need to clear out a bunch of junk. You don't need to add a room or expand your kitchen or this or that. You just need to get rid of stuff.
That's true. I read that in a book by an architect last year.
Okay,
like when we moved into this new house, it was one of the many books my aunt, who was the previous owner, had collected, and she left for us. And I read it, and it said exactly that. Like, you don't need an extra closet. You don't need another dining room. You just need to curate your possessions, basically.
And maybe it's worth taking a moment here to sort of update anyone that's new to our podcast or hasn't kept up to the minute on us. Surprise, surprise. So yes, we have lived in New York City since 1999. However, post-COVID, we left the city for a bit, and we now purchased a fix. Can I call it like a historic fixer-upper home?
It's definitely a historic home that needed some love
in downtown Salt Lake City. And so we live in a duplex where we live in half.
Which is twice the size of our New York City apartment. I was like, we cannot go bigger than double. And we have less than half the number of kids. And so it's already so huge. We're just banging around in there.
Yeah. So we raised our family with 5 kids in an 800 square foot apartment. And now we live in 1,500 square feet with 2 kids, one who's heading out the end of this year.
And a cellar and a backyard.
And an attic.
Yeah.
We don't really use the attic much, but one day.
We're like, what do you do with all this space?
And a driveway.
What?
So anyway, we're basically like the sultans of Salt Lake now, living in 1,500 square feet. anyway, as you talk about decluttering our current space. So sorry, back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's just where the idea really struck me as an epiphany for the first time, was that maybe the solution isn't getting a bigger place or making more money so we can get a bigger place that's closer. Maybe the solution is right in front of you and it's easy and within your grasp, and it's letting go of some of the things you're currently taking responsibility for.
All right. Should we tell should we share some stories about this, some examples?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was the first example for me, because the kids used to have this toy box and it was full of what I like to call mulch, which are all the toys that they pull out to get to the toys that they actually play with.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would step on the mulch. And I remember the kids, the older one, the toddler, would sometimes throw mulch out the window, like say throw a block out the fourth floor window. And then I go run downstairs and pick it back up. And when I came back up, newbie, rookie mistake, she'd have thrown something else out the window. So then I closed the window. And then, and just so you know, these windows all have like safety bars on them. I'm not just leaving a toddler by an open window on the fourth floor, but that's where it started for me. And then, and it spread into all the areas. It spread into our calendar and even more kind of philosophical areas as well. But it's like, what can I subtract to make life better? And this became a huge thing when we moved aboard a sailboat. So that's kind of the overview. And then, yeah, let's tell the stories in the middle.
I just want to say one thing about our apartment in New York. It felt spacious. It never felt crowded. Like, I feel like we had plenty of space. It wasn't like, hey, we're going to like host a graduation here or something spacious.
I mean, we did do that.
Actually,
during COVID.
But I mean, it's like there were 7 of us and we fit. It wasn't like everything had a place. Everyone had a place to be. Everyone had I won't say they had privacy, because we didn't have a lot of privacy, but everyone had a personal space where they could go and sort of feel like it was their spot, their bed, basically.
And I feel like it got bigger and bigger the longer we lived there, because we got better at curating our stuff and knowing what was actually needed and what was useful.
Yeah. Okay. So, our dear friend listening, we hope that you find encouragement in the fact that you may not need more to have the space and the freedom that you want. You might need, in actually getting rid of some stuff, you might find that without spending a dime, except for maybe the gas to get you to the donation center or the dump or both, that you can create all kinds of spatial freedom and freedom in your mind. You're no longer looking at old projects that have to be done, things that are like a constant nag on your energy or your attention. That we're gonna share a few examples, but hopefully it helps you see how you can declutter various aspects of your life, certainly your physical surroundings, but others as well.
I got really honest with myself a couple of years ago, and it was such a relief. That is that I have been hauling around a large sewing machine and lots of sewing material and telling myself that I'm going to learn how to do this better. Like, if I could do this better, I could make clothes for our daughter with Down syndrome, who's not sizes you can buy off the rack. And I finally just was completely honest with myself. And I said, I am not interested in actually learning how to sew. Every time I have a big project, I take it to a tailor, and for $6, they do an amazing job and it's no headache to me. And I'm interested in other things. I don't need to be taking on new hobbies. Like, it's cool. I admire it. If that's something that you love and you have a skill there and you find it satisfying, then keep it. But for me, it took up, in a small space, it took up a pretty big chunk for something that was rarely pulled out and rarely used, but always was a drain on my energy when I thought I should use that. I should learn how to do that. It was always reminding me that I wasn't like living up to this person who was going to learn how to sew.
It was dragging down your credibility score.
Yeah. And so as soon as I donated it, and I donated the fabric that went with it, first of all, it opened up a lot of space. And second of all, I never again thought oh, I should learn how to sew. Instead, I felt really free and relieved and proud of myself and like decisive and ready to focus on the things that actually do matter to me. So that it was one of my examples.
Can I make a weird flex here?
Yeah.
So I realized how habitually we do this today. Getting ready to come record podcasts today. I have a little Tupperware where that I keep cables and stuff in, and I was putting cables in there, and I realized, oh, there's an Ethernet cable in here that I've been carrying around for years.
Ethernet.
You know, remember Ethernet? I was like, you know what? I don't need any more Ethernet cable. It's like a 6-foot Ethernet cable. It doesn't take up a lot of space, but I was like, out you go. And you know what else was in there? Like an wall outlet to USB adapter thing, which we have a bunch of them, but this was like the chunky kind that was 4 times bigger than the one now. I was like, I don't need this. And also there was one, it's a what do you call the Apple earbud things, the AirPods.
Mm-hmm.
It's a set of AirPods that I've like tried 3 times to get them to work and connect, and they just like they don't hold a charge, they don't connect. But I'm like, who throws out a pair of AirPods? These are expensive. Guess what? Today we have a little pile right by our back door where anything that's going out the door, we just set it right there, and that place always has something. And I think that is a good sign that there's always something going out the door. And I don't know if you want to get into this today, but I feel like one of the beautiful things about moving into this house that we're in now has been sort of revealing the beautiful home that lies underneath it as we've gotten rid of stuff. Sometimes it's just been junk in the backyard. Sometimes it's been layers and layers of old carpet. Sometimes it's actually, old fake walls or, fake wood paneling. As those things have come out, it's just letting the original historic home underneath shine. And I think that there's a lot of beauty to getting stuff out of the way so that the real underlying beauty can come through.
I love that. One of the places where I first picked up this idea is in a very funny memoir called Cheaper by the Dozen.
Oh, so good. Highly recommend.
And the mother and father in that story are professional efficiency experts. And they're kind of blazing this trail. There weren't people who did this before. And
it was like the industrial era. It was like, how do you create and build and get stuff out of the factory more efficiently? Is that right?
Yes. And one of the things they would do was color code things. But in telling the story about your cables, yeah, maybe it doesn't take up a lot of space, but in that box, every time you go to find what you need, you first have to move what you don't need out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And now you won't have to do that anymore.
Ta-da.
So I think that's great. And this family, they had 12 kids, which is why it's called Cheaper by the Dozen. And they figured out a lot of efficiencies. And I think I was really inspired by them and how they put systems in place that allowed them to focus on what mattered most, which was their learning and growth and connection as a family. And they had some crazy funny stories, but it was all facilitated by their intentionality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I really love that. We tried this with one of our kids. If you're getting nervous because you're like, I don't want to get rid of stuff, I don't care if it sparks joy for you or not, but is it useful? The definition of something useful is something that you use. So that's a good place to begin. Is it getting in the way and making it harder for you to get to the things that are useful? And here's an example of that. We came back from, I think we spent a few days at the grandparents' house. And when we came back, our daughter kept all her toys in a suitcase under her bunk bed. And so she sat on the bunk bed. I pulled the suitcase towards me and opened it up so she couldn't see inside. And I said, what is in here that you would like to keep? And as
like a pop quiz.
Yeah,
Or what do you remember that you want to keep?
Yeah, what do you want from in here? And so she told me the things that she wanted and the things that there was one item that she didn't mention, which was a photo album of a special day in her life. And I handed that over to her. But everything else she didn't mention, I zipped it back up and I took it to, considering what her toys were, those went to a landfill. And when I came back, she was so happy.
she's like, now I have this whole space and I could play with the toys I actually like, and all the other stuff isn't in the way, and I can make it into a little house. She loved to make houses and create little scenarios, and that has stayed with her. Like, she is a person.
The getting rid of stuff.
She is a person who is always curating her collection. Like, is this me now? Is this me now? And she's 22 now. She loved that day. That was such a great gift that I gave to her, was getting rid of all the toys that she couldn't even remember after being away for 2 or 3 days, and gave her all that space to play in. So
lucky girl.
Yeah. So that was one of the stories. And
should we talk about the big house?
Yeah, I would love for you to tell about this big house, because we went there for you.
Okay, so in the last episode, I think it was the last episode, where we talked about taking a sabbatical to go to a film project. So the film project was happening actually here in Utah, where we are now. And we needed a place to live for the time that we were here. And I had arranged with somebody who had a second home here, and it was just sitting empty. They live in Chicago. And we would stay at their place, and it was a 5,000 square foot house up in a kind of a mountain town.
Yeah.
Close enough to where we needed to be regularly, but not really close. So what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, and 5,000 square feet of storage underneath the living space.
Yeah, the main level was 5,000 square feet, and then there was another 5,000 square feet unfinished underneath that we actually didn't use at all. So you could say technically it was a 10,000 square foot house, but we really only lived in the upstairs 5,000.
Yeah, I think the kids played hide and seek down there and found a dead mouse, and that was kind of the end of it.
So this was a house that had, I think it had 5 bedrooms, and each bedroom had a full bathroom. And we have 5 kids, and so we moved in and we took the master bedroom, and each of the kids were so thrilled and excited to go choose their own. We were just like, hey, just go pick a bedroom and you can have it all to yourself. You can have your own bed. Most of them, I think, were queen size beds. There was one room that had bunk beds.
It had like a loft.
It had a loft.
Anyway, it was
but then
big.
they all had their own bathroom. And so these excited little city kids just went squealing around and chose their beds and bounced them, and just were so happy to have their own space. And then I feel like it was maybe 2 or 3 days into this trip that there was the smallest bedroom with a loft and a set of bunk beds. And I think we came in one morning and they were all piled into this bedroom. Like 2 of them were sleeping on the floor, 2 of them were in the bunk beds, and one was up in the loft. And they were literally crowded into the smallest bedroom in the house. And you want to take it from there?
I think that 3 kids ended up staying in that one, and it was like adjoined to our room.
Yeah. And then the other 2 ended up sharing a bedroom.
They shared a room on the other side.
They're like, let's move in together.
I just remember thinking, oh, this is what I had been dreaming about.
This was your
years
basement.
ago when we had only 2 kids. Now we're at 5 kids, and I had been dreaming about what it would be like to live in a house with so much space, so much storage room. And what I discovered was that it took me 20 minutes to open all the blinds in the morning.
Oh my goodness. And closing them at night. It was it was a chore. And then you got your steps in.
And if somebody said they can't find their boot, you have no idea how long you're going to be hunting for that needed item. Yeah. And I was like, wow. And if you're eating dinner at the table and someone drops their fork or whatever, they need something else or go get another drink of water, you had to walk across the dining hall.
Getting anywhere was a hike.
Go in the kitchen. It was a lot of steps. And I thought, wow, I have been spoiled by the convenience, the luxurious convenience of living in a small home. And we all felt that way. Like, it's nice to be able to spread out sometimes, but the more stuff you have, the more responsibility you have. And it just took away from all of the time that we could actually be out and doing or together connecting. And it was such a good lesson to me. I felt so grateful to have had that opportunity. First, so grateful that they were willing to rent their home to us because we needed somewhere to stay. And it was a really special occasion. And because we were in a big home, we were able to invite the whole cast and host them for a party after the filming was done.
That was really cool.
It was really special. And we were like, oh, this is what a home this size is for.
gatherings of 100 people or more.
Right. And then
The cast wasn't 100 people, but the cast and crew.
But then when we got home again, I was so grateful for our tiny apartment. And like, we can't have lost something for very long because there's not that many places that it could be. And it really helped us appreciate what we already had. And then the next level was moving aboard a 38-foot sailboat. Like 5 years later.
Yeah.
And we had to go through our already heavily curated collection of books and clothing and toys and, you know, other needed items. And we just combed over it again and again. Would you want this? We made hypothetical piles. Like, what if we take these books, but not those books? And
well, first of all, we had to get there on an airplane.
it had to get there on an airplane.
Had to go in our checked bags. So that was a limiting factor right there.
Yeah.
Which was great.
It was good for us to, and
we pushed it. Like we convinced them to take plastic bins as luggage.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, we went to the airport the day before and said, do these count as luggage? And they said, yes, that works for luggage. And then when we came back to fly out, they said, that's not luggage.
But we were pushing it. It wasn't like everything came in a suitcase, for sure.
But, you know, we didn't get to keep everything either. We got stopped at TSA.
Oh yeah.
But anyway,
it was dumbbells. It wasn't anything like I cut it off right before we divulged that we had something illegal.
We thought maybe we would be exercising on the boat, take a pair of 10-pound dumbbells, and
they would not let us.
They said no. So
in checked bags.
I feel that all of those experiences, getting deeper and deeper into this, like actually trusting the process of decluttering, and maybe it's something very good and wonderful, but that somebody else is now going to be able to use it and you won't have to move past it anymore. Just like you were mentioning in a previous episode about our boat. Selling
our boat was kind of that's like a macro level declutter, but you're saying like, we're going to get rid of this boat and it's going to free up a lot of mind space, financial space, opens up new opportunities. It frees the boat to go on to a new life and new adventures. And it becomes something that is really valued and loved by the new owners. Yeah. So there's that.
So that felt great. But I just would love to also quickly, or briefly rather, we don't have to move fast, but address other things that we can get rid of to make space for what matters most. And one of the things that first comes to my mind was an idea that you had. You had been very busy serving in the church and helping all the time. And that was coming to an end. And you said, before we fill this up with other stuff, I want us to put our family on the calendar first. And we're going to start. Do you want to tell about how that played out? Maybe I'm remembering it in the wrong order, but
no. Well, I remember we wanted to create space specifically for our family, and so we created something that we came up with the coolest name for it.
You'll never believe this.
It's called Family Day. And guess what that involves? Taking a whole day to just be together as a family. So we would pick a Saturday and we would put it on the calendar and we'd call it Family Day, and that meant that none of us could commit to anything else that didn't involve all of us as a family. And so that meant we're not gonna help somebody move. We're not going to, the kids can't go to birthday parties. We can't, Emily's not going to go to a baby shower. I'm not going to, go
help somebody
rock climbing
move or go rock climbing.
Yeah. And so, and I feel like we upped the ante and we're like, and we're going to keep it unstructured. It's going to be like, let's wake up and just see what we're feeling. And I don't know that it always remained unstructured, but it always remained clearly just for the family.
Yeah, there was no agenda, and we might wake up that morning and say, hey, what do you guys want to do today? And they might say some things, and then that was our agenda. We want to bake some cookies and do a puppet show with you guys.
Yeah, so we would do that. Or it might be like, hey, let's just go drive across the George Washington Bridge and head north and see what we find. And that was a great family day. Or it might be like, hey, let's all go out to one of the beaches on Long Island, and we'd go do that. And so they weren't like expensive things, but it was just our family. And you couldn't even invite anybody. Like you couldn't invite a friend. Sorry, kids. It was just us. And anyway, it was pretty special. We did that for a good chunk.
3 years.
Yeah.
We did that for 3 years, and then we were committed to live on a sailboat. And so we said, hey, kids, we're going to be doing family year. So maybe in this year leading up, we'll pull back on family day, because there's a lot of stuff we're going to want to get done and be part of in these next 12 months. But I was so validated when we met up with 2 other amazing families that were living on their sailboats with their kids. And they would also start to see that their family was kind of drifting, getting a little cranky with each other, and they needed to bring it back to center. And they would just call out to the other 2 kid boats and say, it's just us today. They didn't have the same name for it, but it was like, it's a no friends day.
Yeah, because our kids were we were as we were sort of boat neighbors, and we were all so in each other's lives, especially the kids. The moms and dads realized, hey, we want to have our kids back a little bit, even on the water, and so we would have like a no swimming over day. You had to, everyone.
They might wave at you from their boat. Hey, yeah, I see you. I know you want to play. Sorry, I can't play today.
But yeah,
no friends day.
Yeah,
we're reconnecting as a family.
Can I talk about the microscope?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, another way of decluttering is also being careful about what you bring in.
100%.
And so as we were getting ready to move aboard, Emily was very conscientious about making sure that our kids were going to get the best educational experience possible. And we were going to be on a boat in really amazing places where you could study marine biology, microbiology, all kinds of stuff. And there was a microscope that was large. I remember it being large, heavy, and expensive.
It came in a case that you could use as an additional chair at your table. Like you could sit, it was big enough you could sit on it and be at table height.
And I think you got the idea because our friends Bian and Jamie, who still live aboard, had one. Is that right? Is that where you got the idea?
Yeah, she had made a post about all this cool stuff, and they had this microscope, and what you could see under the lens, it would like plug into their laptop, so everyone could see what was under the lens on the microscope. And she was talking about all this stuff that they were learning. And so I told Erik, like, this is like an incredible opportunity. We have to get one of these microscopes. And he said, well, how much does it cost? And it was like $800. And he was like, really? Do we really need this microphone or this microscope? And
if it was microphone, I would have been all in.
Right. So I sent a message to Bian and I asked her about the microscope, and she said, we mostly use it as additional seating, but since we actually pulled it out for once, I had to document it. But it's not coming out all the time. Like, we are not using it as much as I thought. You could get a cheap little handheld thing. It's
like a magnifying glass.
You'll be fine. And so then I felt a great sense of relief. Like, it's not actually being used as much. And it's not like our kids were trending towards marine biology, but it was really good that we didn't bring it in, because they would have displaced a lot of the other things that we really actually used.
So yeah, I think one way of sort of preemptive decluttering is just being very mindful about what you bring in, and just thinking, is this something that we want? Is this something that we're going to use? Is it useful? And I'm happy to say that I can look around our house, and almost everything that we own, we use. We may not use it every day, but if we go more than a year without using it, it's a goner.
That's true. I mean, we've been in this house now for about 2 years, and I was looking through the cupboards because there's more storage than I have things that I need to store in the kitchen. And
we just fill them with balloons because we don't.
Party! And I looked up there and I thought, oh, these things came with the house. I thought they were really cool. I thought maybe I would use them. But we've been here for 2 years and I haven't used any of them. So I think these really cool things should go find a new home where they might get used, and just move them along.
So one, you can just clear your space. You can clear your calendar. You can clear your mind, free your mind.
Yep.
And then also be mindful of what you bring in, on new stuff or projects, or just new items coming in.
Yeah, I think the first thing is to know, what's your goal? What is it that you're trying to accomplish here? So, for example, in our house, we decided in our little apartment that we wanted more space for wrestling. The kids were little and it was like rough housing stage, and we wanted room for wrestling. And so the things that were in the way of us being able to wrestle had to go. And that's because that was our goal. Now our goal would probably be to sit facing each other and have inspiring conversations together, catch up. And so we would do it differently today than we did it when they were little. But that's figure out what is your goal, then be careful about what comes in and what goes out.
Yeah. Anything else before we wrap up this episode, Emily?
I think we just want to remind you to ask what could go right. Don't be afraid when you're getting rid of stuff.
Yeah. What could go right in the life of this thing that you're getting rid of?
And what could go right for you?
Hey there, this is Erik. Just want to let you know what the latest is on sailing. First of all, people are having a blast on these trips, and we're actually kind of overwhelmed with the response. But we're having fun, so we're going to keep going. All right, so we do have some limited space for trips this fall and winter. All of our summer trips are full up, but in fall, winter 2024, we have room on a trip to Italy in September, Mexico in October, Thailand in November, and Bahamas in December. So there are limited spaces for those trips coming up. However, we also are booking into 2025. So in the winter months, we're going to be going to warm places like the Bahamas and the Caribbean. And then once we get more into summer, we're going to be in Europe. So Croatia, Greece, Italy, and hopefully we're going to do a week in Mallorca, Spain. So that's the lineup. And if you're interested in any of that, go to theawesomefactory.nyc/sailing 2024. This will also be in the show notes. You can also email us at hello@theawesomefactory.nyc. So go to the show notes. The link is theawesomefactory.nyc/sailing 2024, even though we're talking about trips into the future in 2025. You can also email us at hello@theawesomefactory.nyc. Would love to welcome you aboard.